everybody, welcome. I am your host for today, Katie Hazard, and I am Burning Man's Associate Director of Art Management, which means I am the head of the art department, which is a super amazing job. I'm really fortunate that I can give so much of my energy to something that I love so much. And I'm thrilled to be here together today with you and welcome you to ArtSpeaks. If you are new to the series, this is Burning Man Project's artist storytelling series that we just launched this summer. And we've been having a great time with these so far, getting lots of good feedback, having lots of fun artists on board. And we're just loving this opportunity to showcase some exceptional Burning Man artists. So as folks are joining, please pop a hello in the chat. It'd be fun if you want to share where you're calling in from. It's great that we can welcome folks from all over. You know, I know we're all getting a little bit tired of Zoom, but the cool thing still is that we've got, I see somebody here calling in from Denmark, from California, from Boston, from all over the world. So I'm happy we could be together and that you'll have a chance to hear from these great artists that we have lined up for today. So you're probably all Zoom experts by now, but a couple quick tips. Please, I encourage you to use the chat as much as you like throughout the whole program. It's a really nice way to share your thoughts, to cheer on the artists, to stay engaged. If you have particular questions for the artists, please use the Q&A box that you see at the bottom of your screen, and then we can queue those up for the live question and answer period that we'll do at the end of this event. So today's program, how will today's format be set up? We have 4 artists or projects represented today, and each is going to share a video that they've made for us, about 5 minutes long each one, showing some background and some stories about their projects. And then we open it up to live Q&A with the artists. So like I said, get your questions lined up and put them in the Q&A box, and we'll do our best to get to as many of them as we can in the time that we have. Oh, it's fun seeing more people in the chat where they're calling in from. Texas, Delaware, Chicago, Miami, Helsinki, Colorado, Reno. Cool. It's fun. Welcome, everybody. So our topic today, the title of today's show is Desert Athenaeum, the Art of Playa Libraries and Learning. I want to share a quick story that my very first year at Burning Man was the year 2000, and the artwork that stood out to me the most that year was a piece called Body of Knowledge by the artist Dana Albany. It was a large human figure seated, kind of Buddha-like, in fact, made entirely of books, and it was 14 feet tall. And later, once I got to know Dana, I learned that she used out-of-date textbooks and discarded library books, like she didn't want to be using something that somebody would actually be reading. And she explains it that each book represents a single cell or part of the body. And sometimes people ask me what my favorite artwork from Burning Man is of all time, which is like a ridiculous question because there are hundreds of projects every year. And, I've been going for 20 something years like that. It's like, how do you pick one? But if I have to say something, sometimes I will say Body of Knowledge. Like, I think often people say something from their first year. And if you have an all-time favorite, feel free to drop it in the chat. It can be from Burning Man, or if you haven't been to Burning Man yet, it could just be any favorite artwork of yours. Body of Knowledge compared to some of the work we see in Black Rock City nowadays, it doesn't seem that groundbreaking. But for me at the time, personally, having come from the world of museums and art history, I was used to sculptures being made out of marble. Something as simple and straightforward and striking as books as the medium really kind of jostled my sense of what art could be. And it brought together 2 worlds that I really love. So over the years, we've seen a range of artworks in Black Rock City that highlight books and libraries. Just last year, we had a really lovely piece called The Bard's Branch by Pixie Pam that was this big swirling spiral of color coordinated books, and you could climb up them like a spiral staircase. And at the top was a really cozy chair that one person at a time could sit in and read. I'm also excited to share that next time we have Burning Man, we have funded a project called Unbound by Jules and David Nelson Gall. That's this really gorgeous deconstructed library. We had them this year at Desert Arts 3View, so I can put a link to their video in the chat here if you want to check out their really great video talking about their project. But you see this show up in lots of ways in Black Rock City, not just in art. There's a theme camp called the Black Rock Public Library. They like to joke that their checkout period is for 1 year. And then back in the day, I don't know if I've seen it recently, there used to be a mobile library truck, the Black Rock Bookmobile, that would tour around that you could borrow books from. And then one other place that we all know and love probably is the Rockstar Librarian. She compiles a list of the best music on Playa that really helps guide all of us. And also there are all kinds of books written about Burning Man. We have a whole library set up at our office, and there's a great list of recommendations on our website, on our journal. We can put a link to the chat in there, books about Burning Man. The Burning Man organization actually just published its first book. It's called Built to Burn by Tony Coyote Perez. Actually, I have it in my stack here. It's really fun. It's got lots of good stories about Burning Man. It's totally worth checking out. And so we'll link to that in the chat too. And we're looking forward to actually publishing more books after this. It's a way that we can support our authors in carrying forward Burning Man culture and philosophy. When I was younger, maybe high school or college, I took some career tests to help me figure out what I wanted to do. When I grew up, thanks to my dad and mom too. I think they helped me set those up with them, and I think they're on the call today. And this test came back showing that the #1 career that I would be happiest in was being a librarian. And it wasn't a huge surprise. I've always loved books and reading, but honestly, I think I'm happier in this role. I doubt they had the Burning Man art director as one of the options on this career test. But all that is to say that there are some remarkable similarities between Black Rock City and books. Both offer an opportunity to learn, to grow, to enter a different reality altogether. Of course, it's much more challenging to get yourself to Black Rock City than to crack open a book. And Burning Man is a full visceral experience. All 5 senses are really engaged. But I love how they both can help us access different worlds. Especially nowadays when we can't see our friends or our families, we can connect with the characters that we meet in books. Even though we can barely leave our houses, we can still voyage to other worlds through reading. And just like every book or every lesson is its own creative endeavor, every artwork has some kind of story or narrative. So today we're going to get a little meta by having artists tell stories about their art that's about telling stories. So as you listen to the stories from today's artists, I want to remind you all that Burning Man is all about participation. There are no spectators. So remember, as you hear these artist stories, think about how you too can get involved. I imagine you're probably into books and reading and learning if you're joining us today. So how can you take that love and share it with the wider world? Maybe that looks like bringing art to Black Rock City someday, or maybe that takes a different form for you, but I invite you to stay open to the possibilities. So without further ado, let's get into it. I am excited to introduce our very first artist that we have today. We've got Esmeralda Nadeau-Jasso, who's coming to us live from British Columbia, Canada. For the past 10 years, Esmeralda has been an artist, designing and creating paintings, multimedia art, inflatable art structures, and props, sets, and costumes for theater, circus, and film. Her work tends to be very intricate, using her ability to engineer movable parts. She has also worked for Cirque du Soleil, making inflatable props, and she founded a circus company in Montreal called Cirque Antique. I first came to know Esmeralda through her 2019 Burning Man honorarium project called La Métamorphose des Animaux Extraordinaires, which for you non-Francophiles is the metamorphosis of extraordinary animals. She was so lovely to work with, and we were really grateful to have her work in Black Rock City, and we're happy to have her here with us today. So welcome, Esmeralda.
Hi, happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much. So Esmeralda's created this really lovely video for us to watch, so let's go ahead and roll that.
Esmeralda, the lead artist for La Métamorphose des Animaux Extraordinaires, and I'm here to tell you a little story about how the book came to be and the learning process it took to make it. As much as I love books, it's quite ironic I made a book. I struggle immensely with words and writing. I was always labeled as having a learning disability. I'm severely dyslexic, I have ADD, and word and writings are my kryptonite. But as a child, I always loved pop-up books. I remember looking at them, opening them and closing them and trying to figure out how they would work. I was always in complete awe in how they could just fold so neatly onto itself. It's a very tactile visual experience, which is how I learn. It's engineering and it's art. Even if words are difficult, I love storytelling, and I end up doing most of my storytelling through circus. Through shows, building characters and costumes and props. The first giant pop-up book I made was with Camille Garneau, and it was quite a few years back. I had no text, just scenes, and it was made from cardboard. It didn't last long, but people loved it. It never made it to the Playa, but the initial intention was always to bring a giant pop-up book to Burning Man. We applied for the honorary grant and didn't get it, but it was for the best because I did not have the skills to build a giant pop-up book that would survive the Playa quite yet. I had to let that idea sit in my head for years before I could figure out how to do it properly. So after many years of making costumes, I did a couple classes in biology that influenced a lot of the art I was doing at the time. I had a baby and started making wooden toys for my baby, and that's when I discovered laser cutting at a local fab lab, which was a total game changer in the way that I could build things. I finally found a way to make a wooden pop-up book. Still, there was a lot of challenges to get the book going. First off, I just moved across the country on top of the mountain in the middle of nowhere. I was a single mom. I didn't know many people in the area. The closest major city is 8 hours away. The nearest town is 10,000 people. So getting building materials, finding a team, fundraising were extremely challenging in this area. Thankfully, we got an honorarium grant from Burning Man and a grant from Beakerhead and GVS to get the project going. My preferred aesthetic is ornate and antique, and La Métamorphose des Animaux Extraordinaires was heavily inspired by 19th century biology textbooks. The 2019 Metamorphosis theme was a great theme to work with, and while doing research I learned a few things, like, did you know that jellyfish go through metamorphosis? Or when caterpillars are turning into butterflies in their chrysalis, there's a moment where their bodies turn into goo. I wanted to share these fun science facts with the world. I also wanted to share the natural beauty around me. All the flora and fauna illustrated in the book are found locally. On the frog page, we recorded the music in a swamp near where I live. Going into the project, I didn't fully know how I was going to build it, and it took a lot of trial and error. Each page was built to withstand somebody walking on it, but at the same time be light enough to have one person flip the pages and have space to allow for the electronics and the lighting. So I ended up having to come up with an internal grid structure, and the hinges were also quite difficult to get the spacing right. For the pop-ups, I needed to work with something stretchy but also strong enough to withstand the weight of moving wooden panels. So after many failures, a lot of failure, I ended up using some old bike tubes and reinforced canvas. All the illustrations are hand-painted with watercolor, and the lettering was based off the lithographs of Johann Christian Bierpaf, who lived in the 1600s. I met my wonderful partner Felix, who wrote all the text for the book because that wasn't going to be me. And my brother made the music for each page. My community also really came together to help me out with the project. The project kind of became the talk of the town, and a lot of people who I had just met became an integral part of the team. I was also super lucky to have a fab lab an hour and a half away so I could use their equipment. After many sleepless nights, we brought the book to Burning Man. The team and some pretty incredible random people helped finish the book on the Playa in the middle of a dust storm. It was pretty well received, and it was wonderful to watch people play with the book and learn a couple things along the way. After the burn, we brought the book to Beakerhead, a festival in my hometown. Kids and adults alike really got into it, and it was very inspiring to continue to tour the book. But life had different plans, and I had a Burning Man baby in May of this year. Also, COVID hit, so the book is going to have to wait for a bit. When it's possible, I am planning to bring the pop-up book in its full glory to my community and hopefully teach some fun science facts about metamorphosis. The whole project was only possible through a lot of failures, learning through mistakes, and tenaciously not giving up.
Wow, that was really beautiful. I only had the opportunity to see the final product of it, but I didn't really get to hear all the bits about, how you had to work through how to make the hinges and the whole range of everything. It was really cool to get to know more of the backstory of that piece. Such a beautiful work. Thank you so much.
Thank
you. And the next artist we have today, I'm excited to say are joining us live from Helsinki, Finland. We've got Ansi and Ot joining us. I just love having international artists on the program. I'm really happy that you guys can be part of this. So Anssi is the official Burning Man regional contact for Finland. He was the first person in that role, and he started that in 2014. He has a master's in entrepreneurship and design management from Aalto University School of Business in Finland, and he was a visiting scholar at Stanford University. He's based in Helsinki, and he works at the intersection of business, technology, art, and design. We've known each other for enough years that I can't remember how we met, but he's fantastic at inspiring his local community of Finnish burners to bring art to BRC year after year. They brought a bunch of really beautiful projects, which is a big deal, bringing art all the way from that far away. And we also have Ot with us today. She is a partner in Demos Helsinki, which is an independent Nordic think tank. Her mission is to change how people and organizations collaborate in the 21st century. And her specialty is building communities and partnerships of action that give momentum to change. She also leads Untitled, a decade-long process and a festival of social imagination and experimentation founded by an alliance of actors. She has a master's in political science and world politics and was a visiting Fulbright scholar at Harvard University at the Graduate School of Education. She also taught at the Parsons School of Design in New York, as well as at the University of Helsinki and Aalto University. She has lived in 4 countries, in 2 continents, and traveled many more. They are both clearly rock stars, Finnish rock stars, no less, and I'm glad they can be here together with us today. Welcome, Ot and Anssi.
Hello, thanks for inviting us. This is really nice.
Yeah, super excited about the possibility.
Yeah, we're happy to have you, and I love that background. That's cool.
Yeah, that's actually from 2016 Man Base.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we're about to show your video so people will understand why that makes sense. So let's go ahead and roll that video.
Hello, good evening from Helsinki, Finland. My name is Outi, and I'm glad to be sharing with you the story of Kouluschool.
And my name is Anssi Laurila, and I'm the regional contact for Burning Man in Finland. So before we're diving deep into the wonderful world of education, so just briefly mentioning that Kouluschool was our second project. Before that, we brought a piece called Pipe of Mana. The year after, we brought in a piece called Cosmic Egg. And last year, we brought a sauna that was called Steam of Life. And we're very much looking forward to bring it back to Black Rock City when we finally can return there.
2016, we brought in Kouluschool. Koulu means school in Finnish, so we hijacked the word for our concept of pure teaching. And what happened in Black Rock City was that we asked Burning Man participants to gift their skills and knowledge to other burners. But we didn't leave them alone with that, but actually taught people how to teach. We created an easy way for people to create great lessons and teach each other. So we took a lot of research and a lot of practice of what makes good quality teaching and learning and distilled that into this 5-finger rule that helps people to get motivated and confident about sharing their skills. One really central aspect in contemporary Finnish education thinking is that it's student-centered. It's not about the teacher, but it's about the students and interaction between them and the so-called teacher. And this.
So how did the Koulu school get to Burning Man? So it was actually 2 weeks after I had returned from our 2015 adventure, when I was completely burnt out and telling myself that I'm gonna never do this again. And then Otis' colleague Roope came over and suggested me that, hey, that we should take this Koulu concept to Burning Man. And I was a bit hesitant, but it was really a no-brainer after we heard that the theme for 2016 was going to be Da Vinci's workshop. Once we got to Black Rock City, we occupied one of the guild spaces by the man base. So if someone was there, so we were on the 9 o'clock side.
Although it was a beautiful space, the real art is inside it. And what happened there was that more on the morning side, we were teaching people how to teach, and then people would come up with what they could teach, plan their lesson, and then make little announcements what they were teaching. And yeah, here the real art is the people and the curriculum they create. And in Burning Man, some of the topics that were taught there was, for example, binary coding, landscape ecology, how to become a real traveler. There in that picture, there is people on the lesson of how to draw labyrinths. I remember there was chocolate making, sensual massages, and whatnot. You can just imagine how imaginative the burners can be. But yeah, Koulu School story didn't end in Burning Man, and we contacted a Finnish NGO and development organization called FinChurch Aid that is especially connected or concentrating in education, and asked if they would be interested. And they got really interested, so interested that they sent one of their employees to Black Rock City to see how the pilot or the prototype works.
And once we were through with Black Rock City, so they got really excited about the results and wanted to organize a couple of pilots. So in the end, there were 2 pilots in Nepal, one in 2016 and one in 2019, a little bit after. But also after 2016, so the next spring, the second pilot was in a refugee camp in Jordan called Zatri.
And we work with burners, we work with adults, we work with kids, we work with education professionals. And what surprises me time after again and inspires me, the diversity of subjects that people come up to teach. First day when you say like, hey, teach something, they're like, oh, I don't know, I have nothing to teach. And then we help them discover what they could teach. And then what they come up with is, for example, here are some from our Helsinki Koulu School, from Burning Man, from Borderland, from how to habits form and change, to braiding hair, to conflict resolution and peace building, to folk dances. And in the Zatri refugee camp, it was rap singing, barbering, walking on stilts, Syrian circus. And the other thing that always takes me is how emancipating and joyful the experience of discovering that you can teach something and you have the courage to do that, to teach others. And it's a really kind of intimate moment also to learn from your peers. And I would say that in Koulu schools, the atmosphere is always, no matter if they're kids or the education professionals, it's always been very festive and joyful atmosphere there. And Koulu School is an open source concept. We have materials and how to organize it, how to do the teacher training and so on. And we're not actively employing those ourselves at the moment, but we are happy to share if anyone's interested. Thank you very much for listening.
Wow, it's so inspiring. I love the concept of the 5-fingered thing, you know, no matter where you are in the world or what language it is, you know, we all have that thing and it's like an immediate mnemonic, like it's right there for you to be able to remember. That's very clever and such great work that you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the next artist that we have as our guest today is my inspiring friend, Christina Sporong. Christina is a metal sculptor and a performance artist based out of Taos, New Mexico. She's built many large-scale sculptures for a variety of venues and festivals, both in the States and internationally. She is a process-oriented artist and a kinesthetic learner, so she delves deeply into the components of whatever medium she chooses to express herself with. She uses movement, metal, fire, and scale to provoke a reaction or an interaction. She also teaches welding and blacksmithing workshops nationally to women as a means to empower them and demystify the process of working with metal. She teaches welding at the University of New Mexico as well, and she's been coming to Black Rock City since the 90s and bringing art for many of those years. Interestingly, she has things in common with both of the previous artists. She was born in Scandinavia, in Sweden, right next to Finland there, and she has a background in performance art, like Esmeralda. So who knew that there was a weird Venn diagram of Scandinavia and circus arts and Burning Man book themed art? Anyway, I'm very thrilled to have Christina with us here today. Welcome, Christina.
Thanks, Katie. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So let's go ahead and watch Christina's video.
Hi, my name is Christina Sporong, and I am going to present the Flybrary, a sculpture I built for Burning Man last year, 2019. The Flybrary was a large steel head, a planar head, 20 feet tall, and within it was a fantastical library. And the head was open, and these book birds flew out of the head, symbolizing our thoughts coming out of the head. That's me constructing it within our shop in Taos, New Mexico. I asked for book donations for the Flybrary for many months and acquired a library of over 500 books of amazing quality books, classics, theater, philosophy, all kinds of books, books on flight. Really amazing library collection that ended up going inside this library. I wanted the birds that flew out of the head to look like books, to kind of symbolize the thoughts and the ideas that we have that are triggered when we actually are reading. And so I call them my book birds. People could come in and check out books for the week. We threatened that we would come find them at their various camps if they didn't return it, but really I wasn't too concerned about having the books returned. It was more of a service to promote reading and to help people have a conversation within this space. And the space had many tiers. It was catwalks within the space and places to sit, and a children's library. The Flybrarians worked day and night, checking out books and interacting with the public. And it was really lovely, this interaction. As people walked in, there was like a reverence in the space. They'd suddenly hush down, almost like they were in a real library, and really take it in and then start perusing the books, which I'm sure started many conversations. And I've gotten feedback was quite powerful for people at various places in their life to go here and discover something meaningful. People read books inside, they took them with them. There was a kids section. Of course, there's my son, all the classics. Yeah, there's so many different amazing books, really. All the books were stamped with an ex libris to show that they were part of this project. I loved watching the people having interactions and reading to each other. It was really sweet. We did work with a group from Denmark called the Human Library, and in the back here you'll see a chalkboard of the human books that we checked out and what the topics were. And it was just a fantastic project, thehumanlibrary.org. and these are the two people that came from Denmark to train and represent the people at Burning Man. And you could basically go and say, I want to check out the polyamorous person for 20 minutes. And then you would go talk to them outside of the Flybrary. And the Human Library is a project to help unjudge and challenge stereotypes through dialogue by creating books that are just people talking about their various experiences in life. And it's a great opportunity to meet people that you would not normally meet in your normal life. This is an organization that works all throughout the world, and so it was a real challenge to bring them to Burning Man, actually, and I'm so grateful that this worked out. Inside the library, again, it was so sweet. There were neuron chandeliers that lit up the space at night, you know, lots of little momentitos in there to look at. All right. And that was the Flybrary at Burning Man 2019. Thank you.
So cool. I mean, I just love how it was aesthetically, you know, that with the books flying out of the head and then the idea of the inside being a library. But then when you added that element of the human library, that just, I just found that really fascinating. You know, Burning Man is definitely a place where you talk to people that you don't know anyway. It's much easier to talk to strangers there than in the rest of our lives. But what a cool concept to be like, okay, here's what the topic's going to be. And I'm a book and I'm going to tell you my story about whatever it might be. So super cool. Thanks so much. And finally, last but certainly not least, I'm happy to welcome my dear friend El Nino. Nino Alicia was born and raised in Puerto Rico, where he started his art education. He moved to Indiana, completing a BA in Fine Arts and Graphic Design from Purdue University. And then he moved to LA. So he's been working there as an art director and design producer in film, TV, and commercials, including art directing Ricky Martin's Las Vegas residency and now his world tour. Nino has been bringing art to Burning Man since 2015 and is also the recipient of a global art grant from Burning Man. He's one of the most positive, high energy, warm artists that we have the pleasure of working with. And while I can't really find a way to fit him into this Scandinavian circus Venn diagram, let's just say that he is one of a kind and a super lovely guy. And please join me in welcoming Nino.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Katie.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you with us here today.
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and watch the video that Nino made for us.
Hello, community. My name is Nino, a Puerto Rican artist and a production designer. As you can see, I brought you today to my latest feature film where I'm production designing. And yes, it is at a motel, but no, it's not porn. I anyhow wanted to say thank you to Katie Hasser and everyone involved with ArtSpeaks for the invitation. My crew and I are the ones responsible to bring 2 art pieces plus an outreach program to the Playa. The first art piece in 2015 was called God Framed. For those who remember it, it was a gigantic gold frame, hollow in the middle, with monkey bars and ladders on the side. God Framed marked me as the first Puerto Rican to ever bring art to Burning Man. The idea was for all of us to have fun creating a masterpiece. It was also dedicated to my grandmother in honor of her 91st birthday with 91 roses around the frame. Her name was Rosamelia. In 2017, my crew and I, we had the honor to receive the honorary art grant for the piece called Mucaro. Mucaro was a gigantic owl, 32 feet tall, that you could go inside with a spider ladder going all the way to the head, and the head moved 360. The piece was dedicated to education and teachers everywhere. One teacher in particular, my mom, who was a teacher in Puerto Rico for more than 45 years. As you went inside the piece, the walls and the theme inside was decorated with a lot of books. Any kind of class that you had to take in school, we put it there. A lot of photos from our crew when we were kids in school, and it was a lot of fun to decorate. most of us witness his eternal flight to eternity, and we let it go. But rising from the ashes, we created another project, in this case, to help Puerto Rico. The same year that we created Mucaro was the same year that the hurricanes happened in the island. And we wanted to do something to help them, and I created the project called Mucaro for Puerto Rico. The piece will still be dedicated to education, but in this case, gearing towards sustainable energy education and options to try to help the people in Puerto Rico. One thing that we learned creating Mucaro was that as we were building Mucaro, we were all learning. The piece was dedicated to education, but we were all learning. And we all came out of this experience with such a growth, spiritual growth. And why not bring that kind of experience to my people on my island? So the idea is to create that same kind of experience with the communities down in the island. As we know now with COVID, for obvious reasons, we had to put this project on hold. But that didn't stop me. I actually continue creating and hope to bring another piece in 2021 or 2022 called Eat Me. And it's actually a gigantic fish that it was inspired by a ceramic piece that I made in high school. And now it will be a piece that I like to bring to the Playa. And the idea is going to be a ladder that goes all the way to the mouth of the fish. And then once you're actually inside the mouth fish, there will be a tunnel slide going into the body. Our hopes are to continue inspiring other future artists, to continue learning. We learn a lot from all these experiences. We learn a lot about how to create fellowships and community with ourselves and with our friends. And I think it's very important to continue this legacy, especially for the future artists that want to bring any art to the Playa. If you'd like to find out more information or ways to help with the project Mucaro for Puerto Rico, and also any of my other projects in production design, art directing, or prop mastering, please follow me at Leave It to Nino. Again, I want to say thank you to Katie Hasser and ArtSpeaks for this opportunity. And let's continue thriving and inspiring.
I like that little ending. Oh, what an amazing project. So awesome. Yeah, I don't quite know where to start. Just that I'm so moved always by the amount of community participation. When I get little windows into seeing what it looks like, there you are at a meeting in somebody's backyard and you've got a whiteboard up and you're all talking and planning, like stuff like that. Kind of also how Ansi and Ot were talking about how the people are the art. That's what I feel like is a lot where the magic happens in the community there. So thanks so much, Nino. So what a fun tour, really inspirational. I feel like even just these glimpses through videos and stories make me appreciate the breadth and the depth of ways that Burning Man artists explore the world of books and learning and the world around them. So now we're going to bring back all of our awesome artists for a question and answer period. If you have a question you'd like to pose to one of them, please use that Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And let's go ahead. Esmeralda, I have a question for you first. How do you think your background in circus arts influences your sculptural work? Do you see some overlap between circus and your amazing pop-up book?
Oh yeah, I mean, just in terms because I made so many props in circus, you have to really think about people's safety when you're building circus props and circus costumes. So a lot of that did translate to the book to make sure that things were safe still, but still artistic and beautiful. So there's a lot of correlations in building and things that you have to think about, because on stage, so many things can go wrong, especially when you're using fire props, especially when you're doing acrobatics. You kind of have to think about all the ways that people can hurt themselves. And also you want to have a very, visual and beautiful experience as well. So it yeah, it completely correlates with each other.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, Burning Man's also the kind of place where it's like, what could go wrong, you know? So, and how did your pop-up book survive during the course of the event with, 80,000 people all like interacting with it? How did it turn out?
I like surprisingly pretty well. I mean, there was one point where one of the pop-ups kind of like went a little wobbly, but that was easily fixed with a bunch of epoxy. So yeah, no, it actually survived quite well. There was definitely like I learned a lot too in the process. Like I would maybe do a couple things differently. Like I wouldn't make it so difficult to open up and fix the electronics.
Oh, right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like little things like that I would have changed, but no, it survived surprisingly well. And then I also survived another festival that was like only 2 weeks after Burning Man as well with a bunch of kids. So
Congratulations. I mean, it's hard, especially your first year to bringing art, to have something really make it through, and something that kind of has this feeling of fragility. And yet that's great that it people were able to play with it the whole time.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Ot and Anssi, a question for you. Is this Kulu school method something that's practiced across Finland? Do schools, et cetera, use it? Or is it something that you and your team developed?
We developed it actually before Burning Man for a first edition of Koulu School, but I think it does draw from Finnish education thinking. Like I said in the video, it's very student centered. Nowadays, going more and more into like researching yourself and being very interactive.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And if we want to learn about how to do that ourselves, is there a website? Oh, there we go. We've got some contact info for you guys in the chat. Because now that I know a little bit about it, I'm like, oh, I'm often trying to explain how to do something to somebody in all kinds of situations. Like if I had an easy way to be like, get my hand out.
Yeah, we have Google Drive filled with materials that you can just take. And actually it's really good for presentations even if you have to give a presentation, this like 5-finger rule works with that too.
Fun, thank you. Christina, a question for you. Somebody asked, let's see, where did it go? Just a moment, there we go. They asked, is the gender of the head deliberately ambiguous? Or is there a gender that you have in mind for it? For the library. Oh, you're muted. Thanks.
It's no, the head was deliberately made non-binary. So I didn't want to represent a man or a woman. I wanted it to be ambiguous, and I also wanted it to be multiracial and not. I wanted a sculpture that everyone on some level could relate to. They could look at it and either think it was beautiful or relate to it, what they projected onto it, rather than being kind of a classic sculpture of a white person's face or a black person's face or a man or a woman for that matter. So yeah, deliberately ambiguous is the answer.
Good. Nice. Well, that gives everyone the opportunity to see some element of themselves in it, and not feel like it's an other. So cool. Thank you. Nino, let's see. Someone is asking where the inspiration came from to do the schoolhouse themed interior of Mukuro.
First of all, actually echoing Christina here, Mukuro was an it. I didn't want to give it any kind of sex, as I think it should represent everybody else, everybody in the spectrum. For the theme or the idea where that come from is because I grew up with a mom that was a teacher, and whenever she will always put me to help her decorate her classroom, and she will always love owls, either with a diploma, whether it's the graduation hat or anything like that. So it's something like we always associate the wise owl as something that is actually part of education, with the big glasses or anything in that aspect. So that's why I wanted to continue keeping the theme that once you went inside the owl, it kept that theme of education and teachers.
That makes a lot of sense. I liked how you had that owl t-shirt on in your video too. I mean, right, there is the, you know, like all the way back to the owl and Winnie the Pooh, you know, like the owl is the wise, yeah, it's just kind of like this, like the animal medicine of owl is about wisdom. And
everybody knows it as that kind of totem, that it was actually just something that is being inscribed like in history as like something that is wise. And that's why I wanted to like keep it also. One of the things that I really wanted to do also is to keep all the educational part below the head, and the head just be about the view into the playa.
And it was a spectacular view. I mean, I remember climbing up through the top, and you know, for folks that weren't there themselves, you would look out through the big eye holes, you know, so it was sort of these like portal windows, like looking out, and it depended on, like you said, the head could turn 360. So sometimes you would go up and you'd be looking that way or that way. And that was really special.
Thank you.
Christina, another question for you. Someone is asking, what was the process for selecting and training the human library team? I'm going to add to that question myself a little bit. Had they been to Burning Man? Was there some amount of acculturating that you had to do for that group?
Yeah, so I'd heard about the human library through a friend of mine who is a university professor in Oregon, and they had come there. They were difficult to contact because they're so busy. And they figured out that they could send 2 people to Burning Man. It was a long process trying to figure out how to do this in a responsible way without bringing a whole bunch of people that had never been to the playa as books, and where they would camp, and if that was a viable solution. So instead we decided to use people from the playa who, of course, everyone has such an amazing story. And yes, they were trained. And that is part of the Human Library's directive, is to make sure that everyone feels safe. And so they sent out applications. People who wanted to be a part of the Human Library, sent in applications, and then they were vetted. And once on Playa, they had a few meetings just discussing possible uncomfortable scenarios that the Human Library has seen. And I think that's all just as a safeguard to make it comfortable for everyone. So yes, not just anyone could show up and tell a story. It had to be, they had to go through a bit of a process. And I would say that the human books were really fantastic, you know, and I think having a framework like that makes it easier to create a situation like that, like a human library.
That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, it could go many directions if there weren't a little bit of boundaries set on it in some way or another. So that makes a lot of sense. That's interesting. Thank you. Esmeralda, a question for you. Someone's asking, what was your pop-up book about? Was there a story? I mean, I know in your video you explained that it was animals that were going through some level of metamorphosis, but when you talked about your partner Felix writing the words, like I'm curious if there was a kind of narrative to it too.
Well, it was all about a bunch of science facts, but even like spelling really simple things and like writing simple structures is really difficult for me. But yeah, it was just a bunch of science facts, like do you guys know about the immortal jellyfish, or like this, or you know, like there's just like fun science facts about metamorphosis with animals. Just like the way that moths are interested, like the reason why they go towards the light. There's just a couple. It was mostly just, it's like a science textbook. So it was a science textbook about moth, Hylophora columbia, a frog, and jellyfish.
That has to have been like the most beautiful science textbook. But that's cool because, you know, like all kinds of people must come across it at Burning Man and they're not going to read every page, you know, like the way you would a book. So it's a cool way that you can just have that self-standing thing. You can come up and read about the moths and have your own experience about that. And then, you know, go off towards the next bright thing like you're on moth, That's neat. Thank you.
Thanks.
Ot and Ansi, a question for you. Someone's asking, in your experience with Kolu, what are some of the most interesting or unexpected things that people came up with to teach?
Oh, there's been hundreds of lessons in different Kolu schools over the years. Few examples that really have stuck with me was in our first Kolu school in Finland. There was a lady teaching how to knit the sock, the heel of a woolen sock, and that was such a popular class because Finns are big on woolly socks, and I think many have the trauma from the school trying to knit that thing and failing. So that was like people just were rushing into the class. But then one that really I remember that forever was in Zatri in Jordan in the refugee camp. There was a 16-year-old girl teaching rap singing, and she had been learning that herself. And she was amazing when she was doing that. And then the thing, it just turned into this joint session of singing, young girls coming up with I remember when she was teaching one girl, she asked her to just say a poem, and then she helped her to turn that into a rap. And then after that, it just exploded into this joint singing. And it was also very heavy because they were going through the experiences of war and losing their mothers and whatnot.
Yeah, I think it was at the end of it, everyone who knew Arabic were crying.
Yeah.
And then of course, the rest of us were okay, what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's really moving. Right, because in your video, when you talked about going to Jordan to the refugee camp, I was kind of oh, I wonder what they're going to teach. And then it was things like stilt walking and rapping. And I was kind of oh, no matter where you are in the world, people want to be kind of celebratory and joyful. But it's interesting to hear more about that it actually was a lot of kind of processing and, working through the emotions of what their situation was there. What a great tool for you to be able to offer them to have a way into being able to express that. It's cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Somebody posted something interesting in the chat that I want to just make a note of for the recording later, but for anyone that's not checking the chat, somebody from the organization called Next Library, they're pointing out that Burning Man is an important and amazing inspiration for innovation of libraries and others in the field. And it is important not to think of libraries as a book branch. Libraries are in the branch of learning, bridging diverse communities and equities, learning, data competencies, supporting democracy, etc. So I just appreciate that call out from a friend who I think said she was joining from Denmark, if I remember the name, who said earlier. That's a really good point. So there's a lot that libraries are doing in the world of civic activation nowadays that I appreciate that about them. Here's let's see. We'll have one last question, and this is for all of you. So the question is: was your artwork in a way your story, or were you facilitating other people's stories? If any of you feel inspired to answer that one, you can go for it.
I'll start.
Great.
All right. So I think it was a combination of both. The reason why is because I created, yes, I was a creator of the idea of Mukaro in 2000, actually, because I brought God Frame in 2015 and 16. But in 16, I actually had applied for Mukaro for the art grant, and I did not get it. So it was a huge lesson for me to learn that, actually echoing what Esmeralda said earlier in our session, that I wasn't prepared. I was not ready to bring Mukaro to the Playa. So it took me another year to start meeting with people in my community, people who knew their strength, and start combining those strengths together. So it was a whole learning experience as I actually continue going on. And then we applied again for 2017, and that's when we got the grant. But I think that we needed to have that denied or declined first in order for me to learn what we needed to be able to make it happen. And then even through the experience of us building it together, it just created this strength in our fellowships, in our community, where the piece was dedicated to education. I think I mentioned that in the video, but it was actually educating us and how to continue moving forward, how to like deal with the weather in the Playa. And if you can actually build on Playa, let me tell you, you can build it anywhere. But at the same time, I think is actually we had to go through that experience ourselves and understand it as a community. So one of the things I also told my crew is that, yeah, this project, I created it, but now it's our project, not my project. And I think that that's actually a huge turn, or a way to actually point of view to see it, that once actually we are all together building something, it's everybody else's project. Everybody owns it.
I love that. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else want to take a go at that question? We have just a minute or so left.
I'll just
Well,
say that, who?
Please, Christina.
Okay. I wanted to create a space that I wanted to go into. And that's usually how I make my art in general, is I dream it. I usually go to sleep thinking like, what do I want to see in the world, or something along those lines. It's kind of idealistic because I can't build most of the things that I dream of, but I wanted to create a space that I could go into. So I agree with Nino that it's a two-staged answer, because then it's also an offering, because the space becomes alive when other people interact with it.
That's great. I'm glad the things that you want to see in the world are similar to the things that I want to see in the world, and that you actually make them come alive. Thank you. Ot, it sounded like you were going to chime in too.
Just saying that absolutely, other people's stories, all about like encouraging and helping people to get the courage and get the means of getting what they are excited about, and what they have inside of them, to share that with others. So this is definitely a platform for that, project a platform for that.
I bet it's fun. You meet somebody, you don't know anything about them, and then you hear the thing that they choose to teach, and you're like, what, you know how to do that thing? Or, it must be fascinating.
Actually, I've used it as a way to introduce people to each other, like in student groups, for example.
Ah, smart. Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually like what the Finn Church Aid did afterwards, or like what they were actually interested about the whole concept was that not to use it for education per se, but actually use it as a psychosocial support tool for people entering refugee camps, when there are people coming there and like they're being stripped away of like all of their self-agency and everything, so that like that's something to remind of their life before, and like what they can be proud of, and what they can also present their skills, and like if you were the best baker in town, so you can take pride in it and share it with
Really
others.
lovely. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Esmeralda, do you want to finish us out? Do you feel like your amazing animal creations are related to your own story in some way?
I guess like, I don't know. I just, it's hard for me to say, like, a lot, like the whole book itself, I felt was like me. Like I have a huge passion for science, and I love antique things. So it was just like, it's a very personal project, and kind of a way to, put a bunch, like, do the only way that I can really know how to teach people, or like kind of give information out, is like through something that's artistic and visual.
Plus, I imagine the metamorphosis theme each one of us can relate to that in our own lives. I mean, I don't know that much about you, but you started off, you're a Francophone speaker. You started off on one side of the country, you're on another side. Like all of our lives transform in one way or another. You became a mom, like all of these different things. Like we each have our own way that we experience metamorphosis in our lives. And so I could see that theme could be kind of universal, but also personal.
Yeah, it's a constant changing and learning experience that, it's kind of like a never ending sort of metamorphosis in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Better.
That's great. Well, I mean, the whole world, we're in a funny state of our collective metamorphosis right now, I think. But I am looking forward to maybe emerging out of this together in a more positive kind of light. So I'm sorry to say that we have to wrap up now. I'm looking at the time and we're at time, but it's been such a treat to spend this time together with you and to hear all the comments in the chat. Like it's really fun to see the ways that people feel connected to one another through ArtSpeaks. I'm happy that we can do that. It feels good for us to be able to offer it too. And so in closing, I just want to say thank you. It's, the season, end of November, time for feeling grateful and for counting our blessings. And so first, I really want to thank today's artists. Some of us are perfectly content to just bury our noses in a book, but you guys have gone above and beyond. You've taken a love of books and reading and learning and brought that to life, turned it into beautiful, inspiring objects, but also really most importantly, experiences for people. So well done, huge kudos to you. And thanks so much for sharing your stories. I also want to thank the ArtSpeaks production team here at Burning Man. This episode, I especially want to give a call out to our tech folks, Devin, Heist, and Tranquility, who does the chat. You guys make everything so flawlessly smooth. Special shout out to Devin, who is working behind the scenes today for us on his birthday. So happy birthday to you. And then to all of you, a huge sincere thank you to all of you for attending today, for supporting the artists, and for whatever ways you are finding to stay curious and activated and keep opening your minds and your hearts through the magic of books and learning. If you have any feedback about ArtSpeaks, we're really open to hearing that. You can write to us at artspeaks@burningman.org. And more art in your future. Our next episode of ArtSpeaks is coming up on December 16th, Wednesday. And the theme is going to be the art of illumination. So we're going to feature artists who focus on light art, especially at this darkest time of year. So looking forward to that. We're lining up some really good artists for that one. We'd love to have you join us, and the registration is on Kindling. One other artist I wanted to mention just briefly that I was introduced to recently, whose name is Brian Detmer, and he works completely in the medium of books. He carves up old encyclopedias and such like books. He's shown in a lot of museums, but his work is too delicate for Black Rock City, but it's really mind-blowing if you're into book art. So we can put his Instagram link in the chat. His name is Brian Detmer. And lastly, if you are also in the mood for gratitude and being thankful, you can express that by making a donation to the Burning Man Project. The work that our team does year-round to support these artists is part of the larger mission of our nonprofit organization. I want to invite you to look at the really positive impact that Burning Man has had on today's guest artists and also on the lives of everyone that they've touched with their amazing artworks. The skills they've built, the relationships and community they developed, all the folks around the world who they've inspired and activated by first installing this work in Black Rock City and then around the world. And so now multiply that by 400 plus art crews every year, and think of the thousands of artists and people we've impacted around the world. This is really important work. It's meaningful work, and we need your help to keep it going. So if you feel moved to support us, we would really appreciate that. It's donate.burningman.org. So a huge thanks to you for joining today. Wishing you a great rest of your day. If the artists all want to come on and say a quick bye.
Moi moi, kiitos.
Bye. Thank you, Katie. Thank you to all the fellow artists for inspiring me too.
Well, thank you. Hey, Doa. Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much, everyone. Take care.
Thanks,
Bye.
Katie.
Yeah.
Everyone else.